With the combine here and almost ready to get started from Indianapolis, what better time to do one more pre-combine mock draft? Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans and let's mock the Texans. A 4-round mock draft coming your way here in just a moment. Couple of conversations about the exercise of the mock draft. It's way too early to really have a good sense of everything. With the combine starting this week and me being in Indianapolis covering it in person, lots of stuff will change with these prospects. Guys will work out poorly. Some guys will impress and run super fast and fly up draft boards. And the combine has a lot of stuff that teams know now that will then come out that the public and then the media start to learn and know about these players as well. Plus, free agency still has to happen. So a lot of these positions that teams draft here in these early mock drafts become moot and irrelevant for those early picks because they spent big money on a free agent. For instance, if the Texans sign a big cornerback, I wouldn't mock them to have a cornerback in the first round. But when we get this thing started, if there's a cornerback at 23, I'm probably taking that cornerback at 23. So the mock draft is a fun exercise. It kind of helps you put a check mark next to a couple of names. And with me in Indianapolis this week to cover the combine, we put some check marks next to some names. I can talk to those players about potentially playing in Houston for the Texans. We'll use the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. The speed here, not super fast. If we see something we want to go up and get, I'm allowing trades in this way too early mock draft. Didn't change any of the advanced settings. Positional value a little bit less. We've seen that change over the years. Running backs, linebackers going in the first round. Draft for need. It always makes sense to draft just a little bit closer to maybe a position you don't have or you haven't invested in. We'll keep the randomness low for this one. Maybe we'll have a goofy, crazy one where we just turn the randomness all the way up later on in the lead up to the 2024 NFL draft. But let's get started and get in there. The Texans in the first 4 rounds have 5 selections: 23, 59, 85, 124, and 128. Those are the picks that we're starting this draft with, but you never know what's going to happen as this thing gets going. Let's start the draft and see what all goes down. All right, seeing some wide receivers and tackles fly off the board. That pushes some good players down the board when you see a guy like a tackle or a center or somebody like that go ahead of the Texans selection. It pushes a good player down the board. I already know what I'm doing with this draft here, but let's take a quick look at some of the players that pushed some good corners down the board. Obviously, the QB, wide receiver, that very much feels like that's going to be the first 4 picks as long as those 4 teams are making the selection. A little surprise there that Drake May went ahead. That's way too high for Cooper DeJean, but the Chargers doing something unique and different with Jim Harbaugh. Okay. It's not that crazy. Some tackles. Nate Wiggins at corner. That's really high for him. I don't know that he's the top corner on anybody's board, but he's one of the top guys. Came off the board here. This is weird because they've got TJ Hawkinson, and they probably need a quarterback. So this draft for the other teams hasn't made a ton of sense. Let's take a look at what the Jaguars and the Colts went with. The Colts getting J.C. Latham, nice player, helps out that offensive line. The Jaguars getting this guy, the edge from UCLA, Latu. He's a freak. That'd be really good for them. That would help make up for the fact that they drafted Travon Walker instead of Aiden Hutchinson a couple of years ago. But let's not waste any time. We know what the Texans are going to do here. I've been talking about this player for weeks. He was one of the best players at the Senior Bowl. He's one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. And I understand that when you see guys that played at Alabama or Georgia or Missouri in the SEC, and you see that and you're like, man, you're going to pick a guy that went to Toledo? Quinyon Mitchell is a throwback cornerback, okay? He is the type of guy that just goes about his business, locks guys down. If he needs to be physical, he'll be physical. If he needs to play them so that he can match their speed, he can do that. He's throwback, old school. I love Quinyon Mitchell. He was fantastic in the Senior Bowl. I love that he stuck around at Toledo despite teams trying to get him to leave Toledo. I love everything about it. There's some trade offers. Let's take a quick look at them. Nah, no thank you. No thank you, Carolina. Okay, yeah, no thank you, Chargers. You messed up on that top pick, so you're trying to get back in here. Yeah, no thank you, New Orleans. We're taking Quinyon Mitchell in this draft. Will roll on. So the Texans use the 23rd overall selection on a cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell. Him and Derek Stingley create a fearsome duo. Looking for maybe an edge rusher or a wide receiver. Daniel Jeremiah's new top 50 came out this week. 12 wide receivers in the top 50 prospects. So hopefully one of those is sitting there at 59 with the Texans on the board. Michael Penix on the board. Maybe somebody's trying to come up for him. Jalen Polk is a nice player. Started at Texas Tech, finished at Washington. I like him a lot. Let's keep taking a look here and see if there's anything that we just feel like the Texans have to do from that standpoint. I actually don't love Polk being higher than some of these other guys. Like, for instance, Brendan Rice, Malachi Corley, even Thrash and Leggett are guys that I feel like are as good or maybe better than Polk. Let's see what the trade offer is. Okay, so the Patriots asking us to drop back a few spots. They want to come get the 59th overall pick. I don't like it. We just went with a defender, so let's go with an offensive player. I really, really like Malachi Corley, and he is not going to be there when the Texans make their next selection. And he fits perfectly with what Tank Dell and Nico Collins bring to the table. So I would have liked someone like Ladd McConkey or Troy Franklin, or even Adonai Mitchell, or maybe even Xavier Worthy. But a lot of those guys have popped off the board already. Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker from Texas A&M, would be a player that I would think about here in the second round as well. Roman Wilson is a really nice player. I like him a lot. He would have been a selection possibility there. But let's go with Malachi Corley, and there's a variety of reasons we'll go with Corley. One, sort of dynamic, can do a little bit of everything. Maybe you can hand the ball to him in the backfield if you want to do that Deebo Samuel-esque thing with him, but he's physical. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. There was this one play where he just ran and just blew up the cornerback, and it was a pass interference play. It's offensive pass interference. The referees threw the flag, but he's physical. He's not afraid to get dirty, and you need that out of the wide receiver core in this style of offense. They love that those guys go and block hard. Let's go with Western Kentucky's Malachi Corley and keep this thing rolling. So that was 59. 3 selections left in this mock draft. 85 in the third round, 124 and 128 in the fourth round. Starting to see some players fly off the board, some edges. Tavondre Sweat just went off the board as well. And oh no, the safety from Miami that I really, really, really like, and a lot of you have put in the comment section that you like him and you want me to pay attention to him. Cameron Kinchens is off the board right before the Texans selection. That's a rough one. Cam Hart is a guy that's a cornerback. Obviously, the Texans got one in this mock draft in the first round, but he's a guy that I would think about if, for instance, the Texans went wide receiver early or defensive tackle or defensive end early. Jalen Wright is a guy that I probably would have considered as well. Probably wouldn't think as much about these running or wide receivers as you already drafted one. Man, Braden Trice would have been a guy if he slipped there. That's who I wanted is Cameron Kitchens. So that's a bummer. Let's take a look at this. Braden Fiske is a physical, nasty defensive tackle from Florida State. He was really good at the Senior Bowl. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. might be a good fit here. Get you a linebacker. There's a couple of concerns about his game. I mean, he was thought to be a year ago a first-round pick, and now you see most people having him checking in outside of the first round and sometimes outside of the second round. I don't really want to invest in any offensive linemen. The Texans have dumped a lot of assets in there to the offensive line. Michael Hall Jr. is another interior defensive lineman. That's a fun player to think about. Man, I don't love any of these running backs. Now, Cade Stover, the tight end from Ohio State, is a guy to think about, but I'm thinking maybe there's a tight end a little bit later on in this draft that I could swing for if I'm the Texans. This is one of my favorite running backs in the entire draft, Marshawn Lloyd, and I'm actually surprised that he is still on the board. And because he's still on the board and the Texans need to add to the running back room, I guess in this scenario, maybe they haven't spent big money in free agency. But let's go with USC's Marshawn Lloyd, a little do-it-all action at the Senior Bowl from him. He showcased the ability to catch the ball really well. The Texans could use some depth and investment in the running back spot. So a defender in our first pick, Quinyon Mitchell, but we got a lot of value out of that, so we can go offense. Let's go with Marshawn Lloyd, the running back out of USC. So Jeremiah Trotter comes off the board right after that. So does Fiske. So a couple of those guys that are nice defenders, lose out on them, but starting to solidify that offense a little bit more. 2 picks in a short amount of time here. And so nobody that you're really trying to move around for at this point. Sure, maybe as things start to develop in the draft process, the Texans could use those 2 fourth-round picks to move around and jump around within the 4th round if somebody starts to fall. I'm not to the point where I feel like they need to start doing that. So now let's start trying to figure out, let's see if we can get one of these big fellas, a defensive lineman or interior defensive lineman, so a guy at tackle, or Ben Sinnott from Kansas State is a guy that I would think about at the tight end spot. Let's see. You know what? Let's just take a look at the tight end. Be very offense heavy doing this. Theo Johnson was probably the best tight end at the Senior Bowl, so we're going to stay away from that. He's got a little bit of shake and move to him for a big fella. Let's take a look at the defensive lineman and just kind of see, is there an edge defender that the Texans should go take a swing for? You know, Grayson Murphy at UCLA with Latu, pretty impressive tandem. Clemson defensive linemen usually hit the league pretty well prepared. Jalen Harrell was one of the best players of the Senior Bowl for a couple of days, so that's a guy that I would keep an eye on. Probably a little early to take a swing at him. Let's see if there's a defensive tackle that we like. Let's take those edge defenders out of here. Let's see if there's an interior defensive lineman. Okay, nobody I'm dying to go get. Jordan Jefferson had a really nice Senior Bowl, so that's a guy kind of put a check mark next to and kind of watch how the draft process plays out for him. Is there a linebacker that we like in this? Ooh, yeah, there is a linebacker I like. I like Cedric Gray, a little bit of a do-it-all, or hopefully a do-it-all type guy. Maybe not an immediate starter for the Texans, but a guy that can help you on special teams right away. Is pretty athletic. Still feels maybe a little early for that. Let's look at where the rankings are here. Corner, we already drafted a corner, so I don't know if I want to go to the cornerback spot again. You do need quite a few. Kalen King is a cornerback from Penn State. The Texans met with him at the Senior Bowl, so they're at least somewhat interested in him. Just not a lot of safeties. I mean, the safety would work out here if you wanted to make that investment. You know what? I'm going to reach a couple of times. I'm going to make sure that the big tight end from Penn State, Theo Johnson, doesn't get away. It's only a handful of picks, but I'd hate to lose out on a player that I really, really like from that standpoint. And then scrolling back through here again, no tight ends. You know what? Let's take a swing at one of these edge guys. Grayson Murphy from UCLA. Let's take a swing at him, get a defensive player to sort of round out this mock draft. So started with the defender, ended with the defender here in the 4-round mock draft. And they don't like this pick or this pick. They feel like both of them were reaches. I would be surprised if Malachi Corley gets out of the 2nd round. I'd be surprised if Marshawn Lloyd gets out of the 2nd round. And certainly if he does, getting to the Texans at 85 seems unlikely. It felt like Theo Johnson was a little bit of a reach, so I get a C- on that. But I get an A+ on Quinyon Mitchell. He's really good. I like Quinyon Mitchell. He's probably one of my favorite players in the entire draft. He's my official draft crush at the cornerback spot. So this is a pretty solid draft. Now, obviously, with this, the Texans will have needed to have invested in defensive tackle via free agency, invested in defensive end via free agency, probably linebacker as well. There were some options for us at a couple of those spots. But again, with free agency not having happened yet, you kind of just take a swing and have to assume that the team addressed those positions that you didn't draft with some free agent money. What'd you think of this mock draft? What did you make of the selections that I was able to take, filling in for Nick Caserio? Although I don't wear vests. My chest never gets colder before my arms do. So I just usually go for the full-on jacket. No vests for this guy. What'd you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down to the comment section, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to Houston Football. There's going to be a tremendous amount of coverage of the Scouting Combine from Indianapolis this week on Houston football. Interviews, analysis, rumors, all of those different things are going to be on Houston football. The link's in the description down below. Just $7 a month. That's right, just $7 a month. And if you sign up for an entire year, I'll give you 2 months free. That's right, 2 months free if you sign up for an entire year. You can get signed up in the link in the description down below. And if you don't want to sign up and pay for it, there's always some level of free content on the site. I do try to take care of you and provide some free content, but of course, you get the most out of the site for just $7 a month. Certainly appreciate your support and your help. Anyway, you want to do it, even if it's just a simple thumbs up on the video. And as always, with the mock draft rule, if you want to send me your mock draft on Twitter /X at Cody_Stoots. If you want to send me your mock draft, we can talk about it and chat about it, but it's got to be pretty realistic. Don't make any crazy trades, and it has to be 4 rounds or less. Be happy to break down your mock draft on Twitter if you want to send it to me at Cody_Stoots. That link's in the description down below. Everything's in the description down below, including Underdog Fantasy. Go support our friends at Underdog Fantasy as well. Play a little season-long baseball, not having to start everybody every day because you do best ball and it automatically starts your best players. Check it out. Underdog Fantasy, the best way to fantasy. Appreciate you watching the video to this point. So much more from Indianapolis. Free agent of the day will continue with Landry Locker. Don't miss out on those. Appreciate you watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.